Welcome to Why We Collect,
a podcast by Bright Archives.
I'm Catherine Barbera.
And I'm Dave Bernabo.
Today we're talking with Ed Steck.
Hi, my name is Ed Steck.
And I've known Ed for a long time. I've known Ed as a poet, sometimes a musician, and most recently he's the co-owner of Fungus Books.
I am a co-owner of Fungus Books and Records in Wilkinsburg, Regent Square area in Pittsburgh. I'm a writer, an artist, write poetry and other difficult things to read.
Yeah, I've only ever met him maybe one or two times, but I've definitely been a visitor of Fungus.
And I'm excited for this one because I think it's going to be a weird episode. Ed is a book collector. He has other collections that he'll talk about.
I collect books and movies, particularly books of experimental poetry, like hard-to-find poetry, occult and witchcraft books.
He has a lot of cats. The house is like decked out like a cat house at points. It's pretty good.
Right, because you did this interview. I wasn't there. I missed this interview, unfortunately. But you did this interview in his home.
Yeah, and we kind of move from room to room and talk about whatever books are in those rooms. So it's a little bit of a travelogue through his house.
A travelogue of books.
Yes.
I like it.
Yes. And one of the things I'm excited about this one is that there are a lot of books I never knew existed. And it's wild to just learn that certain things exist, even if it's just books. So there are books that are viewable in rooms. There are hidden books. There's all kinds of stuff. And I think we'll just get into it.
Yeah. No, that sounds really exciting. Cool.
So I know things are in multiple locations in the house.
Yeah.
Can we talk about some of the earliest things you collected?
Yeah. I mean, the earliest thing that I collected as a child, my father and I would watch horror films on TV, but the way that we would do it was we'd go through the TV guide, local TV guide listings, and I would highlight the ones that I wanted to watch. And because they were on so late at night, we would record them, dub them on tapes. And then I would use those tapes, I had a little cabinet, and I would, make the cover art. I would even review them sometimes. And some of them would have 5 different movies on them. And so I had a bunch of those. I don't know, I think they're all gone now. But I continued to collect horror films. Action figures I collect still. I collect wrestling action figures. But then it very much got into, I was really interested in comics, and then kind of led me to other underground weird stuff that I then gained a lot of interest in.
Might open up a can of worms, but what drew you to horror films?
I think the violence I found kind of comforting. I like the monsters a lot. Anything that's kind of seen as uncanny. Horror also kind of has very interesting depictions of the sublime. I don't think I really understood that when I was a child, but I do now. But yeah, I was really interested in monsters. I mean, children love monsters. I think they identify with them. And I think really the first film that I really got sucked into it was George Romero's Dawn of the Dead, because I lived in Irwin. I grew up in Irwin, Pennsylvania, and Monroeville Mall was 10, 15 minutes, 20 minutes down the road. And I remember watching Dawn of the Dead and being that is the mall I go to. But I was blown away that something like that, this other world, could exist right where I don't know, my mom and grandma took me to J.C. Penney or something, and Kaufmann's or whatever. And so that really kind of blew my mind. As a child.
I was wondering about the films, because your new book is stock full of them.
Yeah, so the book is called Place Beyond Shame, It's published by Wonder Press. It was published this last year. I think, October 31st was the release date, Halloween. I've done a number of readings from it. It's a long poem that is in various parts that are meant to kind of simulate the experience of going to a late night drive-in double feature. And it's about experiences growing up, kind of like existing still here in Pittsburgh, around the area. A lot of it is about landscape, memory, violence, trauma. And it does use a collection of films as its basis to move itself forward and to even complete the poem. It's the poem sequence. And in the whole book are a lot of mini collections, or like collections of photos used as like a photo essay, collections of films, collections of photographs I took actually here, most of them in my backyard. It is told in 2 long prose poems that are side by side with kind of various parts around it, preceding and succeeding, that are informed by like things like lobby cards or trailers or credits, or even like movie reviews you would read in like the pamphlet waiting for the film. Even just the experience of going to a late night double feature horror film or weird film thing. And there's a place you can still do it. Actually, it's 2 days, 2 nights. It's a Riverside Drive-In Theater. You can camp. I love it. I suggest going.
I'm curious about building collections and also incorporating them into your craft and your art and your work. Is it conscious choice, or is it something that you can't even separate anymore?
It's a conscious choice, but it does kind of meld together at this point. I do think that my research practice is very much creative based, I guess, if that makes sense. So I do look at these things like, how can I use them? And how will I use it to like inform my art, my writing? With like collecting, I'm a former, or maybe current, I don't know, librarian. And one thing I really took from that experience is that an archive or a collection should be a tool, and it should be active, and it should be alive, and it should be used. And I've started to apply that to my own collections, and it's been a great process because I can weed things out pretty easily if they're not working for me or I'm not working with them. But I think it's a conscious decision to like what I bring into the collection, but it's not necessarily totally separate from my writing and art making.
How do you choose what to weed out?
Basically, when projects are done, like for A Place Beyond Shame, I read a lot of film criticism around horror and film theory around horror. I kept some of the books, but a lot of them I let go of. Once the usefulness of it is gone, I want to pass it on to someone else who's using it. Although I do have things that I will never pass on because, there is like a fetishistic object kind of thing about it, but at the same time, I want it to be used. I did not sell my horror films.
While we're here, are there like 1 or 2 or 3 films you want to spotlight?
Yeah, sure. Here, so I'm standing in front of my film collection. I really like the films of Doris Wishman. If you know Peggy Awesh, the artist, she's from Pittsburgh. She has a big role in bringing back the films of Doris Wishman. She made a zine, I think, in the 80s, late 80s, early 90s. That was on the films of Doris Wishman, including an interview. It was republished by Impatient Press out of Brooklyn. I haven't cracked into this yet, but I'm excited about it. It's a Bollywood horror collection. It's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 films and a book, all directed by the Ramsey brothers. So I'm pretty excited about that. Thought I'd include one I haven't watched yet. I just watched this. It was really incredible. I'd never seen it before. Leave Her to Heaven, 1945. It's a noir film starring Gene Tierney, who I truly love. Horrifying movie. I could not believe how terrifying it was. Boarding House is a very strange new age shot on video horror film. It's kind of unexplainable. There's like a new age rock band in it. It does not follow any logical kind of structure. This is Dracula Sucks. It's an adult film starring Jamie Gillis. I actually have a signed poster from one of the performers in this, Secca. She signed the Dracula Sucks poster. This is a great film. I loved Dracula. I used to teach it in a class at one point, and I have to say, this is probably the most truthful adaptation. It really is. I mean, because Dracula is a very sexy book. This is one of my most interesting things in my collection. It's like a portfolio of Free Will and Frank. He was the Hells Angels treasurer in the late 60s. Yeah, this is 1968, Frank Reynolds. And this is a series of his like kind of illuminated poems. They're very much with like imagery of like Satan and 666, but you know, stuff like that. But they're very kind of spiritual poetry. And then, of course, Michael McClure wrote the book Free Will and Frank on Frank.
How do you seek these things out? Do you know about them in advance? Do you happen upon them?
Oh, it's kind of both. It's kind of like I'll seek something out and it will open up other avenues to other things that I'm interested in, I guess. And from there on, it's like, well, I'm going to research this and research what is also being written about by other, not even scholars, but other people. This I'd never heard of, like this Bigfoot Notes. I love this thing, but I'd never heard of it. So I got it out of a catalog that my another friend who's a book dealer put together, and I was just like, I have to have this. I'm like, I love Bigfoot stuff. I also collect Bigfoot stuff. So we're going to be going to the left. Alright. The bathroom is a little like messed up, and we just had this gate up for the cats, but they're doing all right now, so the gate's down. Alright, this is my little library zone here. Crop Circle magazines. I actually have stones from Crop Circle in Wiltshire, England, found in 1991. Right now, I'm working on a large project about UFOs, and it's a long poetry project with like photographs, and I also want to do some research at special collections, libraries, and I've been in touch with some folks, and so right now, I have a lot of UFO books, but it's also generally something that I'm interested in regardless, so I often have UFO books anyways, but they're being used in a different way here. So I can just, looking through UFO stuff, alien animals, alien trail, just very strange texts. This one is signed by the guy.
I do think it's interesting because I usually collect as a way to make things. Yeah. Like it's inspiration.
Yeah, exactly. So I'm going to kind of explain how I do my research or, deal with these books in terms of like a creative practice. Is, I gather materials on and kind of like whatever the disciplines or areas of research areas of like topics that I'm looking into or whatever. So I have here, if I were to sit down, work on the UFO project, I have these 5, but books on UFOs here. Skinwalkers at the Pentagon, which is just like a crazy book. Alien Identities, really interesting. And then this 3-volume massive UFO encyclopedia set that is a bevy of resources. I'll go through this stuff and I'll look for any kind of like event, sighting, encounter that I find to be interesting, or working with something that is more that has more depth to it than just like a UFO project. You know, it's like looking also at like liminality, looking at the unknown, the uncanny, and also looking at something that is wildly old, but to this day we still kind of don't accept it. And then I have books that kind of sit where I look at the form. So this is I'm interested in forms. You know, I'll just kind of flip through these. This is a book by, I have 2 Marcel Schwab, who's like a genius, books here, and very tight forms, and these very succinct short stories or little vignettes. And then this is, you know, Mallarmé. I cannot say this word, divagations. I don't even know if that's a real word. They're really kind of short chunks about a wide array of topics. So I kind of look for things like that. So where can I make connections? So I visited a UFO sighting spot in Great Barrington, Massachusetts last year. And it's like going there and documenting stuff. And how can I make this, like, what connections can I make? So for this, it's very much like, this is kind of where the poetry comes in, where then I'll start writing kind of variations or impressions of the experience that, like, I may have had there, and, like, the difference between those. And then I often remove myself from those those interactions, and then it just becomes the text, I guess. And then the text, you know, can become anything else at that point, and you have like the freedom to work with it and experiment. Like, I started writing a very long kind of prose poemy thing, but I've been looking through like hundreds of these like declassified documents and finding that ones that like really look like like concrete poems or just like old poetry, and so I'm kind of like I don't even know if translating them is the right word, but I'm kind of like Xeroxing them in my mind and then putting them back onto the page. Some of those were just published in this really cool website, trilobite.bond, I think is what the URL is. It's a really cool poetry thing. And then I just have some books that are like things that I hold on to when I'm writing to constantly look at, and that would be Poetic Intention by Edouard Glissant and Phenomenology Perception by Maurice Merleau-Ponty, and Technicians of the Sacred, edited by Jerome Rothenberg, Origins of Consciousness and the Breakdown of Bicameral Mind, Paranormal, Borderlands of Science. I just got that one kind of recently, but I tend to put things like that nearby so I can quickly access them.
I mean, this is a great room. Like,
Thanks.
It's so immediate.
Thank you.
Yeah. And it's like you have a display here, too.
Yeah, so maybe we should talk about this. This is like my mood board, basically. So this is a shelf, and you can't really see it but because you're listening, but I put kind of things here that I like to look at and that kind of keep me into the zone of what I'm writing about. Also, it's kind of like my influences are on here as well. Susan Howe, Ray De Palma, Philip Lamantia, Robert Cossack, you know, Stephen Rotifer, people I really appreciate and like their work. I have numbers of things in here that I was going to sell that I decided to keep. Like this really interesting book, Cybernetics of the Sacred by Paul Ryan. Very strange book. It's way ahead of its time. I think it was published in 1974. And it's about using feedback and cybernetics to make contact with each other, but also how those machines themselves can be in contact and be in communication, and kind of like the resulting resulting into a look into the kind of spiritual aspect of it, which I think is something that is now being talked about in some ways. I have like crazy stuff here. So this is like David Anton's Code of Flag Behavior on a, I don't know what this is, a reel-to-reel tape, I guess. And it's signed by the good man. Yeah. These are in some kind of order. I should say that. Like, I generally don't like to put things in order because I'm into discoverability in like an organic sense. But I do cluster things together in terms of topic or genre. So here's like poetry. So I can pick a few books out of here to talk about, I guess. Well, here's Touch the Marvelous by Philip Manchia, first edition. Gorgeous book. I love him. This here is a really interesting title. It's The Matrix by N.H. Pritchard. This is the first edition of it. This book is also kind of highly influential on me in terms of where my writing has gone, especially in terms of like concrete and visual poetry. And it was published by Doubleday. And then I think Echoes, which is one of his other books, which I don't have a first edition of, but I would like one, was published by Random House, I think. So he's one of the only concrete poets to be published by major publishers.
That one was just pressed again, right?
It was, yeah, by Ugly Duckling Press. And I think Primary Information, they did it together. Echoes was published by DABA, D-A-B-A. I think, which is pretty cool press, too.
Curious, talked a little bit about getting rid of books, and you talked a little bit about Fungus.
Yeah.
Do books from your collection go to Fungus?
Every once in a while. Not a lot. I'll even say when they do, like pulled stuff from my personal collection. I am a collector, so it's hard for me to like pass some things on, but sometimes I do. I'll pass like some signed things on, or just like things that I'm not really using, or that aren't going to be part of like my permanent collection or something, or things that I thought I wanted to be part of the permanent collection that just don't fit or aren't in conversation with the things I have here. I used to have a really big focus on small press poetry, but I moved from Tampa to Boston at some point, and I sold a lot of them, but I regret that. They're really hard to find now, and they're getting become expensive. So I regret that a bit, but not often do I regret things that I pass on. Yeah, some stuff goes to Fungus, but most of it stays here.
There seem to be thematic overlaps, though, right?
Oh yeah, 100%. I mean, that's something that like all of the co-owners there, we say like, we wanted to start a bookstore that we would want to go to, basically, which I don't know if that's a weird sounding thing or not. And yeah, the books in the store are quite a reflection of my personal interests. I mean, I'm sure you can see like poetry, occult, all of the kind of stuff that we sell and stock at the store. And that goes with everyone else who sells there. A lot of their stock is very, very representative of like who they are and what they collect and what they read, and also what they do in their personal time away from Fungus, which is like we have various different backgrounds in this kind of stuff, whether it's publishing, writing, editing, we're all collectors, collecting, dealing art, working in libraries, all kinds of stuff. So yeah, the store is definitely a reflection of our collections, 100%.
You talked about the library science background.
Yeah.
Has that informed any of this, or is this kind of a reaction against it, almost?
I'll be honest, this may be a reaction against it. I am into cataloging in the sense where it makes things easier to find and more accessible to the user. And I think that is wonderful in an academic setting, like a scholarly setting. You need that kind of organization to have that. I hate to say what I'm about to say, but have that flow of productivity. I mean, that's literally what it's about, man. Getting it to the point where it's it's right there. It's about easy flow, and it's great. I'm way into it. Especially if I'm going to a library and need a book on unidentified submerged objects. I'm going to want to know exactly where that is if I need it right then. But if I'm in the mood to, maybe not even the mood, but if I'm in a place where there isn't organization, I'm even kind of more excited because I don't know what's in there, and I'm going to possibly find something very unique and very bizarre, and that does tend to happen. There's so much order in the way that things are done in our world that I think it can become a trap, and that might just be the paranoia part of me. But I think that when things are like the store where there's not much order, we have our own booths or spots or shelves, but there's clusters of things. And they invite you in. But then once you dig in deeper, there's a lot of discoverability there. So I can say this is poetry, but if you go into it, you'll find more stuff here. Or there's a cult, but then at the same time, you might find Byrne Porter's book on leaving science, or let's see here, or this I don't know.
Cat castles.
Cat castles, man. Exactly. We made one. It was awesome. This is a cool book. I love books on cats, and I love books on stuff that you can make for cats. So this one's just so cool.
And that's a how-to guide for making castles for cats.
Yeah, and I have another really cool one if I can find it. I think it's over here. Well, see, this is the problem. If I had these cataloged, I could just find it for you and immediately show it to you, but since it's not cataloged, I can't. But I'll probably find something else interesting and derail the conversation. All right, I'm going to read from A Place Beyond Shame, my new book out on Wonder Press. Came out last Halloween. Been working on it for a very long time. Probably I don't even know, over 10 years, if not longer. This is a part that closes the beginning section, almost. Westinghouse Electric Corporation Research Laboratory in Forest Hills, Pennsylvania, 1999 Southwestern Pennsylvania late winter, 2022 Southwestern Pennsylvania late winter. An abandoned lot with a rotting historical nuclear research device surrounded by razor wire. Pulling down chain link fence from frame with deadened body weight. Slipping in, son of Ghoul slips away into open field memories. Gray sky, dilapidated Westinghouse atom smasher, parked cars. Atom smasher lays on its side, a frosted gourd left out from spring. A 5 MeV Van de Graaff electrostatic nuclear accelerator in a prolonged state of disrepair. A decapitated bulbous head with exposed neck matter at severance point. A rotting head. Son of Ghoul sticks his head inside Atom Smasher, tool of discovery and photo fission of uranium and thorium. Inside the Atom Smasher, a mysterious film plays. Son of Ghoul watches a child and a father walk into Tugboat's bar. Son of Ghoul watches a child sit at the bar alone. Empty buildings, alleyway row houses, shuttered libraries surround. A father walks down a dark alley, pea shooter, 9mm, rifle with scope, disappearing. Outside it is quiet, a cacophony inside the Atom Smasher bulb eddies. Son of Ghoul removes a tear-soaked, pale, near-frozen head from the nuclear research device. Son of Ghoul smashes debris, cries violently, and vomits. Acrid bile rivers in industrial refuse, tossing bricks at the discorporate atom smasher. Piss on state historical marker, tangled in razor wire, discarnate crumple. Police car parked at end of alley creeps. Shouting psychos from the woods edge alert. Tripping, falling, scuffing, crouching, getaway. Sounds of bricks, rocks, metal rods, bottle smashing, clanging off an abandoned atom smasher.
Thanks for listening to Why We Collect.
Thanks to Ed for giving me a tour of the house and a tour of all these books that I'm very jealous of. I will save up my money to go back to Fungus and buy more books.
And if you would also like to visit Fungus to purchase something for yourself, we put a link to the website for Fungus Books in the show notes. This episode was produced by Catherine.
And Dave. And Dave made all the music and sound design.
Thanks for listening.
See you next time.